Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money, so we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now, on with the show.
Use your powers for evil.
Your evil is mine.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Next Stop Everywhere, as Charles and I continue down our path of Doctor Who history. I am Jesse Jackson, and joining me is our Doctor Who expert, Charles Skaggs.
I don't know if expert's the word I would use, but thank you anyway for lying. Yes, hello everyone. Charles here, and we're getting ready to reverse the polarity and go back to 1982, the decade of decadence, with Earthshock.
Yes, and I'm going to talk to a little bit about Charles on why he's picked certain of the episodes we're watching, but I am excited to talk about Charles's favorite Doctor, Peter Davison. I hope that we are still friends after the end.
Uh-oh.
A little foreshadowing there, but
Uh-oh.
overall, I liked this episode, but I did not
Mhm.
like it as much as the other two we've seen. I
Okay,
thought
that's
Spearhead
that's
from
cool.
Space was, and Pyramids of Bars were both a little better.
That's okay. I was just trying to change things up a little bit,
So how about
and I
you?
thought it might
Now,
I thought it might be cool to see some old school Cybermen.
yeah,
That was my main reason.
and
So
so what did you think of the episode?
I enjoy this episode, if only because it kills off one of my all-time most hated companions ever, Adric.
Mm-hmm.
Spoilers, which we'll get into probably later. But it's kind of a big deal. I mean, because companion deaths do not happen very often in Doctor Who. There was Katarina back in the day, and it's so rare. Sarah Kingdom back in the era of the first Doctor during the Daleks Master Plan, but companions don't tend to die very often in Doctor Who. So they usually just are written out one way or the other. Either they leave voluntarily, or they're left behind, or something goes off. They go off with somebody else romantically, something like that. But this is kind of like, I mean, especially in like the first major companion, because Katarina and Sarah Kingdom were not very major companions to the first Doctor. So this is kind of a big deal that this big of a companion gets bumped off.
Yeah. So Charles was very careful to not spoil that, and so was, Ken Schaefer. Take a drink. Um, but I had suspected this was the episode because when I had watched the Redoctors Visited,
Hmm.
they had talked about that episode. And the other issue was Peter Davison told the story at Comic Palooza that he was really worried about Amy and Rory.
Hmm.
And he called Stephen Moffat and said, "Hey, my children watch the Doctor with me, and I want to prepare them if something bad's going to happen." And supposedly Moffat said, "You killed Adric. You have nothing to say to me," and hung up on him. So,
It's a great anecdote.
Yes, I don't know if it's true or not, but it should be. Um, so the I think one of the reasons why I didn't enjoy this episode as much as the other two
Hmm.
is, you know, the other one, the first one, Spirit from Space, we got the very first adventure of that doctor. So
Right.
you felt, I didn't feel like I was coming in the middle of a story.
Okay.
Then I felt I knew who Sarah Jane Smith was, and I knew Tom Baker. And so when I'm watching Pyramid of Mars, it felt like it was the beginning of a movie that I already knew the characters. This one, I felt like I was jumping in mid story.
Okay.
I didn't know who all the companions were. I think there's way too many people in the TARDIS. I'm like, what the hell? What's um, so I think that may have been part of it. When I watched it the second time, I liked it more than I did the first time.
Okay. That's
Um,
good.
yeah, so I mean, but I didn't it and we had a discussion and I like your take on this, Charles.
Okay.
Ken was saying that he believes that in a lot of ways the quality of your companion helps sell the doctor. Like if it
Right.
is a balance that if the doctor doesn't have a good companion, that no matter how good the doctor is, it's a little bit tougher to tell a story.
Yeah. Peter Davison's kind of been on record saying that um, if it was down to him, he would have preferred just to be traveling with Nyssa, Sarah Sutton's character, um, because he felt that he liked the idea of a younger protege, scientific protege that he would kind of mentor, and he thought that the two of them kind of worked well. It wasn't so like with Adric. Um, Adric sulks a lot. He's very annoying at times. He's basically like the Wesley Crusher of Doctor Who.
So you stole
Uh,
my line.
you're welcome.
And secondly, I told that to Ken when we were at lunch, and he said,
Hmm.
that's actually a very valid description of him. Um, and then when I watched the
Yeah,
extras on the disc, you
yeah.
know, uh, I think Moffat talks about that, right? Like the boy genius never works. They tried it in Next Generation. So I
Exactly.
was all proud of me coming up with that description, and then I
And
realized,
I
nope,
stole it from you.
that's pretty much everyone feels that way. He
I'm
was
working. I'm
not,
working on your brain.
yes, um, he wasn't a very, and no offense to the actor, you
that's
always feel
that's
bad, but
Waterhouse. Yeah.
yeah, he does not seem just. I did not see a lot of redeeming qualities in this character.
No. I mean, he kind of like redeems himself in a little bit toward the end because he's like, I want to solve these
Hmm.
logic codes and save people, even though he doesn't realize that that ship is destined to crash into the earth.
Right.
But he's determined though he wants to save it,
Yeah.
and so he's well intentioned. But for most of his run, because he was a late Tom Baker era companion. Came in with the episode full circle, while the Doctor and the TARDIS were in E space with Romana. Um, and then basically Romana stays in E space. Adric comes back, and then they pick up Tegan and Nyssa along the way, and then the Doctor regenerates into Peter Davison, and then Peter Davison's Doctor has like this TARDIS full of companions. So, and I think the idea was that originally you had an older Doctor with Adric as a young, like he's basically like an artful dodger from uh, at least that was the intention, but from Oliver Twist, but it didn't quite work out, and he doesn't quite really fit that mode anyway. But so he's just, yeah, he's basically like the Wesley Crusher of Doctor Who, and it wasn't really clicking. Fans weren't really appreciative of him. There were already too many people in the TARDIS anyway, so it made sense for him to leave the series, and that's basically what happened.
It's okay. As usually when we're doing reverse of polarity,
Hmm.
you're kind of ask us questions and we'll lead through our discussion.
Yeah.
So take it away. What do you
Okay.
want to know?
Well, basically, I just want to set this up that this is a story from season 19 back in 1982. This is Peter Davison's sixth story overall in the during his first season. And it's still early in his run. He's still kind of getting a little bit of a handle on his doctor, so he's not quite there yet. He doesn't really seem comfortable as his doctor until like maybe around the time of the Five Doctors, which is like halfway through his second season.
And
But
I
go
was going
ahead.
to say he seemed at this point a little bland. Now there was a
Yeah,
little more banter and a
mhm,
little more clever dialogue the
right.
second time I watched it, but the first time he really came across a little too bland for me.
Yeah, yeah. His doctor. I mean, he's not a wacky doctor like Tom Baker, and he's not a dark doctor by any means. He's basically the noble knight errant that wants to go off and do good. Um, so in that way, like a lot of people kind of write him off as bland as a result, but I see him as the most heroic of the doctors. So for my money, like you know, that's that's what makes him great. I mean, he's basically my doctor. He's the one I latched onto first. So I'm inclined anyway. But I kind of see him as like he's like the Captain America of the
Well,
doctors.
so I really would, as we're making through our journey, I'd like you to pick another Davison episode,
Yeah,
and
yeah, we can.
I'd like to take another
Yeah,
taste on him, especially if you're saying that he's just he's kind of new into his role and kind of coming into it.
yeah.
Um, you know,
Because his final episode, The Caves of Androzani,
mhm,
um, is basically regarded as like one of the finest, if not the finest, Doctor Who story ever told.
okay,
It won the Doctor Who magazine polls several times. It was only recently upseated or like unseated by the
mm,
Day of the Doctor, but that's the
okay,
50th anniversary, and a lot of fans are obviously into you know
okay,
that's one of their favorites. So if I picked an episode or a story, that would probably be the Caves of Androzani because it's really his Doctor's finest hour, and he's at his most heroic there in that
okay.
episode.
Well,
So
good.
without giving anything away, so maybe we'll do that one later.
That'd be nice. I
Um, but
really would
but
like
I kind
that.
of but I've been kind of trying to get these Doctors early in their runs, and I figured
Yes,
maybe during our second go around,
yes.
we would hit them later in their runs to kind
Because
of give you a little difference.
because I will tell you, reading interviews, seeing interviews with him, and
Mhm.
um, like the one panel I attended, he is one of my favorite ex doctors. You know
Yeah.
how there are really great ex presidents,
Hmm.
that people talk about.
Right. Like Carter.
Yeah, like Carter. Yeah, Carter. Everyone thinks he was a better ex president than he was a president. And I'm not saying Davison wasn't, but I like him so much, and I think part of that is the persona from the Five Doctor ish, and then
Hmm.
also the specials he did at the beginning of Peter Capaldi's run. He just seems to be a really good guy, and so and I did. There were a lot of things where um, it looks a little more, even though the special effects dated, because it's in the 80s.
Hmm.
In a lot of ways, it does feel that's when I was watching TV, and not that
Hmm.
I mean, so
Yeah.
it felt place. I mean, we talked before we started. James Warwick, who plays the leader Scott, right? with
Yeah,
his
Lieutenant Scott. Yeah.
his Mark
Yeah.
Spitz mustache and almost oh, who was the Lyle Wagner, look, from Carol Burnett. I mean, he
Yeah.
looks like a
That
leading
was that
man.
was that's a very stereotypical British officer look
Yes.
with that type of mustache for back then.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you notice, like the Brigadier had that mustache,
Right.
and so that's kind of like they wanted to project like a military leader in this case, even though he's in the future.
Yeah.
We're talking that in this episode or this story is set in the 26th century, so
Right.
basically he's like the 26th century version of that military officer, but
The-
in the 80s.
yeah.
So
Exactly. I did want to mention that it it was very weird being in the TARDIS. And it's a very not just the white circles, but the whole. There's a hat rack there, which it looks like a
hmm
hat rack I owned.
yeah, I
Back
have
in
that hat rack.
yeah, 82, 83. Um,
Yeah,
there's a bedroom that's right off the main control room.
yeah.
It seems a little weird, and the TARDIS view screen is
hmm
so. I mean, it looks like they've taken it directly from, any science fiction show, Star Trek, whatever, that has a spaceship that would show a screen.
Yeah.
And then, from my perspective, and I want to get your feedback on it,
mhm,
I go, oh, that's not how the TARDIS works. That looks wrong.
yeah.
So, did you have a problem when they brought back in the modern era the more steampunkish looking TARDIS? Did that bother you, or you thought it was cool?
Well, I mean, obviously you had to upgrade. I mean, because you're talking 2005 versus, like the 1980s. So yeah, there had to be a change, and I was cool with that. I love the look of Paul McGann's TARDIS in '96, the Gothic, you
Yes.
know, the industrial look, the Gothic industrial look. I love that, and so I was open to change. I like the as the Fifth Doctor referenced so eloquently in Time Crash, the choral version
Hmm.
of the TARDIS, the desktop theme, the choral desktop theme,
Yeah.
uh, it isn't really my favorite. I consider like I really like the current look right now of the TARDIS. So I mean, I like the choral desktop theme, but
Hmm.
I'm not like like it's not like sold it to me, and I miss the roundels. The roundels just kind of, I mean, yeah, they're there, but they're really small and not as noticeable. So it's
Yeah.
it's kind of there to like say, okay, we acknowledge that it kind of sort of is still the same TARDIS inside, sort of, but it's not quite the same. So I kind of miss them,
Do
and I
you?
think older fans will, but it wasn't a deal breaker.
Okay.
Bottom line.
Do you have a theory on why the TARDIS looks really weathered and aged in the older episodes, and then this year, the
hmm
modern era, it's almost
Yeah,
like the TARDIS always looks.
yeah,
It's like it has a
freshly
self-cleaning.
painted.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's like it has a
yeah,
maintenance, thing that it can clean up.
yeah. Well, basically, the whole concept was that in the old days that they wanted the TARDIS to look battered and beaten up. It was a like the idea that it was like a beat up police box that you would find in a junkyard, which starting off the series you did find it in a junkyard. So it wasn't entirely out of place being in a junkyard. It's only like in the modern era where you've got Doctor Who being broadcast in high definition. So that's why you start seeing, now you've got it has to look pristine and you can see the wood grain and all that. So it's just kind of a producer's aesthetic, I guess, because the some if you go through like I said, the older episodes, you'll see that sometimes the TARDIS doesn't look quite as beaten up. Sometimes it does. During Davison's run, for the most part, it did. Um, and so it kind of just depends on the story. I know that There was different TARDIS exteriors used over the time of the original series, but it kind of depends. But that's just the kind of the way it was. It was a beat up police box because it was supposed to be a beat up police box.
Do you do you do you think that um the do you were you I'm going back to the point.
Mhm.
Do you
Yeah,
still feel like you were talking a little bit about all the companions? So
yeah,
can you very quickly tell me how he picked up all three of these, and
yeah,
what
yeah.
was the premise?
I'm speaking in very general terms, but basically,
Yes.
he picked up Adric first.
Okay.
Okay, because like I said, he was trapped in E space, which is basically like a parallel universe.
Okay.
Okay, okay, and that's why it's a little tricky for the Doctor to get back there.
Okay.
um,
Yes.
as they talk about in this episode. So basically, it'd be like like in Rise of the Cybermen, where he had to cross parallel universe or crossed over to a parallel universe.
Right.
But so he and his current companion at the time, Romana, this is the fourth Doctor. They went there to into E space. Um, and through a series of events, Romana, well, they pick up Adric first um, from this planet called Alzarius, and then Romana, in the next story, Warrior's Gate, decides to stay behind in E space with K9. So it's basically the fourth Doctor and Adric coming back to the normal universe, okay, and then uh, in the next episode after that, the Keeper of Traken, they meet Nyssa on the planet Traken, which involves the Master regenerating into a new body, played by Anthony Ainley. And then the next episode after that is Legopolis, which is Tom Baker's final story, where Tegan, an airline stewardess, kind of wanders into the TARDIS thinking it's an actual phone booth because her car is broken down, and um, there's the master's involved still, and she kind of gets lost in the TARDIS corridors, and then so the three of them are kind of joining the Doctor, and then the Doctor dies and regenerates into Peter Davison, and you know it kind of carries into a few episodes with the Doctor trying to get Tegan back home, but the TARDIS keeps malfunctioning as far as navigating its way home, so they never quite get where they're intended to go. And then then you've got like this story where Adric gets killed off. Does that sum it up pretty quickly?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
So one of the things that I think also um, distracts the episode from having a big um, impact on me, and that
Hmm.
I understand in concept, you know, like because the Cybermen have been used so much in the modern era
Right.
that it isn't a big deal.
Right.
But I read, after watching the episode, you go online, I do
Mm.
some
Yeah.
research, and then all the extras. There is this, if you're watching it on a DVD, there is a wonderful kind of putting the shock in Earthshock, I think is what they call it, but it really
Yeah.
does go talk about everything in the episode, and they had current Doctor Who writers talking about as when they were kids, Mark Gatiss,
Yeah.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
yeah, that
At
talked
the,
about
go ahead. I was just gonna say
just
at the time it was kind of a big deal at the time
yes, it
that the
was. It's a
Cybermen came
huge
back.
deal, and that it was such that at the end of the first episode, that reveal is
Hmm.
huge, um, and I do after watching it and understand this was kind of a take on a new look of the Cybermen,
Yeah.
and they kind of expanded a little bit. I love the leader, and I think you've got some information on him that
Yeah.
you're going to share with us. But the
Yeah.
I love his voice. I
The
love the
Cybermen, yeah,
dialogues, just the kind of,
excellent.
yeah, exactly, and just his whole um, demeanor and the
Hmm.
kind of arrogance. It was a wonderful villain, and
Yeah,
a great thing back and forth, and him and the doctor about emotions, and
right.
I do agree with I can't remember if it was Mark Geddes or one of the other people talking about the line about when's the last time you enjoyed a great meal, and they said just the idea of the Cybermen going, oh, this is a wonderful creme brulee. Maybe I should not be evil anymore.
See, that's yeah. Forget the gold. Forget all these devices to
Yeah.
stop the Cybermen. All you need is like a really good chef.
Yes,
And
exactly. Um, but the interaction and the leader and his minions and that was really cool. I like them as a villain in this episode.
yeah, yeah. This was basically the Cybermen's first appearance for 7 years, since Tom Baker's. Actually, no, 8 years, since Tom Baker's first season. There was a and there's actually a little clip in the episode from that episode that from Tom Baker's episode where it was Revenge of the Cybermen, and it was during his first season. So they hadn't been seen again since, like, from 1974 to 1982, and and they're not like listed in the title. It doesn't say like Earthshock of the Cybermen. It's just Earthshock. So they were deliberately kept secret so that when that first part of the story um, it hits that cliffhanger and they reveal the Cybermen, it's like, holy crap, it's a Cyberman. Like, oh, just got things just got real. So it was kind of like I said, it was a big deal at the time. And then you've got David Banks taking over as the cyber leader, who is a this is his first story. This is a new concept, the idea of like a formal cyber leader. They had had other cyber leaders, but they weren't as notable until David Banks. He ends up like reprising the role later on in like oh, was it the Five Doctors? And then you see him again in Attack of the Cybermen, which was Colin Baker's era, and then you get him for his last appearance in Silver Nemesis, which was the Doctor Who's 25th anniversary story during Sylvester McCoy's era.
Okay.
Um, but there's also a really cool tidbit with David Banks, though, is that for a brief time he was actually the Doctor in a Doctor Who stage play that they had at the time back in the 80s in 1989. It was called Doctor Who: The Ultimate Adventure, and originally it had John Pertwee in the role of the Doctor. And this is like I think this was in London's West End. I'm not sure, but then I guess for whatever reasons, Pertwee became ill or whatever. Then Colin Baker took over, and so basically, originally you had Pertwee reprising his third Doctor on stage, and then Colin Baker took over as his sixth Doctor on stage. And this is 3 years after he had been sacked from Doctor Who, so that was kind of cool. And then David Banks was Colin Baker's understudy. So there was a time I believe that Colin Baker fell ill, and David Banks had to take over. I think for two performances. I could be wrong about that, but so he kind of invented his own doctor, which like he just threw in like had some like '80s pop T-shirt, and then like a leisure jacket over it or something, and he had a hat. But just for like just a brief time until Colin Baker could return to the role. But for a brief time, yeah, David Banks was the Doctor, whether you
Ve-
like it or not.
No, no, that's kind of cool. I really, man, I'd love to know that adventure. Was it ever taped or done anything? That sounds kind of cool, you know?
I don't believe it was. I mean, I don't think it was released on home video, but
Yeah.
you may see, like, if you search YouTube for Doctor Who: The Ultimate Adventure, you might
Yeah.
find more about it.
Okay.
If nothing else, you could Wikipedia it and
Okay.
um,
I will.
and then learn more about it.
Okay. Good. All right. So, what else do you want to know about my thoughts on the episode, Charles?
Well, basically, I want to know, like, we like you talked about, like, okay, we got the reveal of the Cybermen, which was cool. Um, there's a moment in the story during the second part where the Cybermen have like they've got their little like monitor device, which kind of looks like I don't know if it's like weird hair dryers or something like that, but like they've got these little devices pointing down and then this monitor image in the center. But they actually they look back at previous Doctor Who stories to say, "Oh yeah, I recognize that object. It's the TARDIS, and we fought the Doctor, and here's when we fought the Doctor. Here's the first Doctor, and here's the second Doctor, and here's the fourth Doctor," showing clips from the 10th Planet and I think Tomb of the Cybermen. I could be wrong, and then Revenge of the Cybermen. So we kind of get a little like flashback to the previous Doctors in this episode, which I thought was kind of cool. So what
I
did you think about that?
I totally agree. I thought it was very cool because um, you and I have talked about this before. I love the continuity of Doctor Who. It is one of the things that I love the most about this series is it is boosted by its past, not weighed down by it, I think is how you've put it. And so it was kind of, yes, this is who this is, and it wasn't awkward because he was explaining to his minion why they have to get rid of the Doctor. And I think there's that great line about of look at him, even in defeat he's an arrogant Time Lord, and Time Lords are promised not to interfere, but this one interferes the most.
Yes.
So it was really, really cool. I thought that, and a pretty nifty little special effect of showing that film within the film that they were doing the review. So yeah,
Right.
I liked it a lot.
And the I think it was pretty notable at the time for seeing that 10th Planet footage from the first Doctor era because I don't think it had been released on video at the time.
Mm,
So it was kind of like fans got to see some footage they had never seen or not since it was originally transmitted. So
right,
that was kind of a big deal. But the
absolutely.
then I want to talk about the like when they in the beginning when the Doctor or the TARDIS materializes in these caves underground and they find these dinosaur fossils, which is basically and the Doctor talks about like they start hypothesizing like, well, I wonder what happened to kill the dinosaurs off 65 million years ago. And the Doctor talks about like, well, I keep meaning to go back and find out one of these days. So,
Yeah,
and that kind of that foreshadows the events that happen in episode 4
right.
when we find out that the through this series of events that the space freighter that they're all on gets thrown back into time 65 million years ago, just coincidentally, and it's revealed that space freighter is in fact the meteorite that struck the Earth and killed off all the dinosaurs. So I was wondering what you thought and as about that revelation, or at least Doctor Who's take on that revelation.
So the first time I watched the episode, I just thought it was a throwaway line.
Hmm.
And many times on the Doctor, they they will talk about that, right? Both in the modern era and the few classic eras I've seen where, I've always been to do that. Kind of the way we do,
Yeah.
oh, I've always wanted to see that show or I've always wanted to read that book. It's almost the Doctor's version of an Amazon wish list, that because that's any book I want to read, I throw it on my Amazon wish list. That way it helps me remember that when I need to go buy a book. So, um,
That's a
and
brilliant comparison, by the way.
and they kind of talk about that and visit, and then this, then when you see the ending, and I connected it while watching, and I assume that when at the end when Adric says, "Well, now I'll never know if I'm right,"
Hmm.
I took that to mean as the theory, right? of I took it maybe of the dinosaur theory.
No,
No, what is
no.
that about?
Well, that whole business where Adric says, like we'll never know if I'm right. Basically, he's talking about whether he solved the third logic code.
Oh, okay, okay, that makes sense. That makes
Does
even
that
more.
make does that
It
make more
does.
sense?
Yes, it
Yeah,
does. But I assumed that um, and I applaud the episode. They didn't beat it over your head.
right.
I really love Farscape. But every once in a while, Farscape would do something. Hey, Dargo's ship is going to be
Yep.
important. Look, see Dargo's ship? Okay, watch. Look, have we mentioned Dargo's ship lately?
Yes. Yeah.
Hello, this is really going to be important. And they
There,
didn't
there,
do that this time.
yeah. There's foreshadowing, and then there's this like blatantly pointing and telling, like,
Yes.
yeah, we're gonna do something with this. Trust us.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen. This is big. Pay attention to this. Yeah.
And, as we talk about often, this is Chekhov's dinosaur instead of Chekhov's gun. This was Chinnik's, the fossil. So very nice.
But
So
go
this
ahead.
is we didn't have a caretaker this time. There wasn't a poacher. So
Hmm.
thank you. This is, you broke your streak.
Well,
But
Robert Holmes did not write the story. It was Eric Saward, the
okay.
script editor.
Yeah.
So
But we did have another companion in a foo-foo, dress. you know,
yeah.
because see, I don't even know which one's
This
which. Yeah.
okay.
This is in
Well,
like a purple dress.
yeah. Tegan is the Australian, or as she likes to refer to herself, she's the mouth on legs.
Okay.
Um, who's like the taller, older,
Okay.
um, you know, bossier, um, and she's basically she's the force of nature. So
Okay.
that and Nyssa is the shorter, younger, more studious, more intellectual companion.
So neither one of them made a big impression on me. Adric
Now,
did
yeah,
because he's a pain in the arse and
right,
irritating, but those neither one of them
yeah.
really struck anything with me. No offense meant, you know.
No, it's okay. That's okay. Now, Nissa is horribly underwritten in this episode. Basically, she's kind of like left behind in the TARDIS. She doesn't want to go outside because she's worried about the magnetic field, or like she's there with Professor Kyle. Who's another female who's horribly underwritten in this
Yeah,
episode. Um, and then it's only at the end where Nissa finally gets to kill a Cyberman inside the TARDIS with one of the cyber guns
yeah,
that she gets to do anything. Now Tegan goes off. Like
hmm,
she's out there, like she's with Lieutenant Scott. When they're confronting Cybermen, and she gets to kill. Like she's actively out there trying to take out one of these Cybermen with a gun. She kind
right.
of rushes in even when she's not really, like Scott says, "What are you doing?" So she's kind of, and that's true to Tegan's character. She's more headstrong. This story isn't the best example of that. There are much better examples. But for the most part, yeah, the women in Doctor Who were not served very well by Eric's Ward. So, which is
And
no surprise if you've read any of his scripts or watched any of the stories based on his scripts.
now what it did, and this is a kind of a those of you who know me might find this surprising, but after watching this episode, I had a new appreciation for Donna. I've
Hmm.
always said that Donna is my least favorite companion in the modern era, but she at least wasn't bland. And she interacted with the doctor. She had her own, to a certain degree, her own story. And it made me really appreciate the fact that, as we talked about earlier, being the doctor can help you, the companion helps the story immensely.
Yeah, and I think if you watch more stories with Tegan, you will see that she's anything but bland.
Yeah.
Nissa is often written bland. Um, just her personality. So you might find her a little boring, but um, Tegan is definitely like she's basically like the hot-headed, opinionated, like she's a little bit of a feminist in a way, and being Australian, that just
Hmm.
kind of amps things up to 11. So, like I said, this story doesn't really serve her as well as others, but and that was one of the because Tegan stays with the Fifth Doctor through most of his run. She's there for like 18 out of his 20 stories.
Wow.
Yeah, she only left like two stories before Peter Davison did. So she's basically like his Amy Pond, or his Rose Tyler, or what have you.
Okay.
It's basically the Fifth Doctor's main companion is Tegan.
Okay.
Um, and you will if you see any more stories, you'll see that she definitely has a mind of her own and is perfectly willing to express it.
Okay. Well, good. Well, I'll have to check that out then.
Yep.
Okay. Very nice.
But let's see, what else shall we cover? Um, the Now, like we find out basically like the Cybermen were their whole reason for getting aboard this space freighter. You find out that like they wanted to destroy this conference on Earth that was to unite military forces against the Cybermen. So originally, their whole plan was like to sneak aboard the space freighter and sneak into Earth under the security of the guys, like, oh, we're just inside these silos. And so that once the freighter gets on Earth, we'll just pop out and invade and get past security. But, and, through the events of what happened, they basically decided, oh, we're going to turn this space freighter into a bomb and try to destroy Earth that way. So, I was just kind of curious what you thought about their plan. Was it feasible? Or did it seem a little cheesy or throwaway, or you weren't quite sure why they were doing what they were doing?
Um, I there was a little bit of a hand wave that oh, it's really important that we stop this conference. And I did love the arrogance of the leader, because the doctor says, because if we combine, if the Earthlings combine, you won't be able to defeat them, and he's like, it would make it more difficult. But it they explained it pretty well. I followed along well. Um, it it felt almost like two different stories because they were in the caves and we had the bomb. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden, the we're in this spaceship that's going.
Yeah,
Um, so it was a little bit of a jump. Like, okay, how did we do this again? How did this happen?
yeah, right.
But I do think that um, the the act breaks, even though they're episode breaks, were
Yeah,
really well done. It was a nice episode, a nice thing, and they came up with a really good place to kind of stop the episode, and they only showed a minute,
yeah,
the next week of kind of catching you up.
right,
So
right.
it,
Did you get a better?
I liked it.
Did you get a better handle on the cliffhangers this time?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I felt
Okay.
much better, and like I said, I think that Pyramids of Mars did a better job of
Well, you had
of
a better right. You had a better
cliffhangers.
writer. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I said, I thought this one was an interesting story,
Okay.
and this, you need a good companion, you need a strong doctor, you need a great villain, and we had a great villain. I also say, yay, 1982, both the captain and the first officer are female,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was kind of nice.
Yeah, that was a kind of
Uh,
a big deal, but they
yeah,
could say, "Oh, it's the future."
right,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I did like, it almost looked like a typewriter keyboard. That was kind of funny. The special
Well, remember,
effects, but
we were using Commodore 64s back then, so a keyboard was not out of
yeah.
place back in the 80s.
But I will tell you the actual suits that the soldiers were in were pretty cool, with
Hmm.
the lanterns on on the
Yeah.
side, and they kind of had the gas mask floating down. And then it the ray guns were pretty cool with the flashy lights.
Yeah.
Um,
Now,
I
did
did
you use it? Did you use the special effects option on the DVD disc?
no.
Because yeah, there's an option where you can improve the special effects a little bit.
Ah, okay. No, I didn't do that. I
Yeah.
did the
Yeah.
first time I did with the dialogue as the subtitle, and then the second one was with the infotext,
Okay.
which is fun. Um, I do think that the credits are so, you know, the little lights, the laser lights at the very
Oh.
beginning of this thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. As far as being like 80s or
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Very,
Yeah.
very not
Yeah.
timeless at all. Um,
Well, I like them.
yeah. Oh, no, no, no. I'm not criticizing.
That's
Um,
all right.
and the other thing is, um,
The Starfield.
Peter Davison looks so young, and I
Hmm.
realize he is, but
Yeah.
I think I told you this, and I apologize to our listeners if I'm repeating. Um, Toward the end of one of the last nights of Dragon Con, both Lou and I were pretty tired, and we just um, got something to eat and sat in the hotel room, and we watched Star Trek 4, the whale one.
Yeah.
And I
Voyage
said,
home.
yeah, I said, wow, they look so young. And he said, you know what's funny is when we watched this the first time, we said, wow, they look so old. And I said, yes, you're right. So it's all perspective, but
Exactly. It's all wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
yes. So
The
Davison is aged incredibly well, though. He still is,
hmm
I think, still a very handsome man with that boyish charm.
Yeah, he when he was when he took over the role as the Fifth Doctor, he was only 29, which compared to like Tom Baker, John Pertwee, Patrick Troughton, and William Hartnell, that was incredibly young. Basically, it was like like it was just he was. I mean, he was in fact the youngest Doctor until Matt Smith. And I think Matt took over when he was 27.
Hmm.
So Matt holds the record for being the youngest Doctor, but yeah, I mean, at the time it was such a change, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what set him apart from Tom Baker's Doctor, because Tom, he was in the role for 7 years, um, and started to look old and haggard in his final season, um, and just he was so iconic, so they basically went a completely different route with Davison, and I think it pretty much worked because I mean, maybe you don't feel this way in this story, but that he had the I mean he had the incredible task of taking over for Tom Baker, kind of like Matt Smith had for taking over David Tennant.
I can
So
see that.
yeah, so I mean to do that and do it successfully to carry on the series, because like if he had failed right after that, who knows where Doctor Who would have been.
Yes.
Uh, so um, I think it's to Davison's credit that he was able to overcome uh, Tom Baker's era for the most part and get his own fans, as opposed to just being people going, like if there was the internet today, or internet back in 1982, it would be like, oh, Peter Davison sucks, he's not Tom Baker, blah blah blah, I'm going to go on Tumblr and post about it. But it's just one of those things that just fans had to get used to, and they got used to it, thankfully, because Peter Davison's charm, like you said, I think won them over and helped the series to survive for a few more years, anyway.
No, yeah, I agree, and I love his outfit. Um,
The cricketer's costume.
yeah, the cricketer's costume is really, really uh, just it's a little bit eccentric, but
Hmm.
it's not totally um,
Out of
horrible.
play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I liked it a lot,
Yeah,
and so a- and there is, like I said, there is a little bit of the snark and the fun of the role. He
hmm
absolutely is smart. I do love the fact that when he's doing the bomb and stuff, he's like, "Oh,
yeah,
that's hot," and his hand back and forth.
yeah.
Um, he so I like I said, it's intriguing enough that I want to see more of his role to get a feeling for how did he grow with the role and what he did.
Right, and
Yeah.
we will do that because
Yes.
I think you'll maybe this story wasn't the best example, but I think you'll see that Davison is the doctor,
Yeah.
and there are better instances. If nothing else, you could see like in the Five Doctors where he's playing off against John Pertwee and Patrick Troughton, that he can really, he's his own doctor by that time, and
Hmm.
you can see that he has his own persona.
Right.
So he's much more youthful exuberance, like kind of a little bit eager. Um, but if you saw Davison in Time Crash with David
Yes.
Tennant, um, you kind of get an idea of what his doctor becomes. I think.
Yeah, and I love him in Time Crash. That is such a wonderful little episode, and just you you truly see how much David Tennant loves Davison, and this is before he became his father-in-law.
Exactly.
This is,
Yeah.
and it is, when he talks about this is you are my doctor.
Right.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that was like obviously David Tennant's way to express that. Yeah, it wasn't just saying like you were my doctor. It was like
Yeah.
it was David Tennant saying to Peter Davison, "You were my doctor."
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
and that
Yes.
was great. Um, Now, going back to Earthshock, um, now there's a very interesting debate that you brought up earlier um, that takes place between the cyber leader and the doctor over the value of emotions.
Hmm.
And and the cyber leader, like at one point, orders Tegan's death to prove his point to the
Yes.
doctor, and does it pretty effectively, in my
Right.
opinion, um, by like threatening to have her killed and saying, "Ah ha ha! Well, guess what? Your emotion caring about Tegan is a disadvantage, sucker."
Right.
So, what did you think about that little philosophical argument?
You know, um, I think the cyber leader was right to a certain degree. I it was y- you you wonder, what else can you do, right? If you're the doctor, how do you not let them call that bluff?
Mm-hmm.
You had to do it. So, and I do think if you were looking, not to get too deep, but if you're looking just from a logical point, our emotions are weaknesses. Caring for people gives you room to be hurt, to be manipulated. But that is what brings a great joy to life. On the day we're recording this, the Dallas Cowboys lost the playoff game, and my son, who is 26, it was just crushed. I knew I had Doctor Who to talk about, so I had that going for me. But and it was and you try to put the logic in that it's just a game. You shouldn't be that invested in it, but if you do put an investment in a TV show or a sports team or your family, you have the chance of being hurt. So I love the fact that the doctor was there to protect his companions, and I think it helps make that the Cyberman leader even that much more evil and manipulative, that he
Mm-hmm.
saw that he uses that emotion as a weakness and plays that card.
See, this is proof positive once again that Doctor Who heals all wounds, even Dallas Cowboy wounds.
Well, I said this last year, and I we were watching a Cowboy game, and I had my Doctor Who T-shirt on, a Doctor Who T-shirt, and Chris is like, "Dad, you got to change." I'm like, "Hey, the Cowboys have let me down many times. Doctor Who never has." So
Well played, sir.
even a bad Doctor Who
Yeah,
episode is gives me joy and happiness.
that's good.
Yes.
That's awesome. Um, one last thing, because we're getting here
Okay.
toward the end, but I did want to talk about after after the whole big dramatic moment where like the space freighter crashes into Earth and Adric dies, and like everybody, like the Doctor, Nyssa, and Tegan kind of like realize that Adric's dead, and then there's a very dramatic cut at
Mm-hmm.
the end to showing broken pieces of Adric's badge of mathematical excellence. And then and then in very uncharacteristic Doctor Who fashion, there's no closing credit theme. No diddly dum diddly dum diddly dum. It's basically silence to and a very just to emphasize that death. And at the time, when I was, younger, seeing this story for the very first time, I thought, "Holy crap! How powerful is this?" That the one they killed off a character, and then just and then there's that eerie, uncomfortable silence with the credits, and you're like, "Is there something wrong with my TV? Where's the theme?" And it just hammers home the impact of this episode as far as the importance of a regular Doctor Who character actually dying. So I wanted to get your take on that closing credits.
So I think it was very appropriate. I know there's been discussion about that. In fact, on the behind the scenes documentary, there was discussion on whether it was overly dramatic or if it was needed. I personally think that if you don't go to the well too often, it's something that really should happen.
Right.
And if you if you're Game of Thrones, you never have
Yeah.
ending credits with no music because that would be every week because the
Yeah.
character dies. But in
But they
this,
did do that. Oh, one week.
yeah,
There was a closing credits sequence where it was just pure silence.
which what was it? Which
I'm trying to
episode?
remember. I'm trying to remember if it was the Red Wedding.
Maybe.
It might have been
So
the Red Wedding. I don't
yeah,
know. So apologies. Don't go writing letters because I'm
yeah,
wrong, because I might be. I admit that
yeah.
right off the.
And if it send it to us.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. But there
but
was
yeah,
one episode where it
it
went
is
silent.
it is very rare. And that's why I thought it was a really strong ending, and I
Hmm.
think that uh, Nissa and Tegan, right, and the
Yeah.
doctor all are hurting,
Hmm.
and I'm glad they didn't try to say for that episode they just ended it with the scene and credits
Yeah.
to give you the impact. It was I was really happy with it.
Yeah. There's a bit at the beginning of the next story, Time Flight, where they address it about like whether the Doctor could use the TARDIS to go back and save Adric.
It there
And
that dialogue may be mentioned later in this episode. Just saying.
oh, uh-oh. Well, there's a little tease there. But he's got his Doctor Who quotations book. So,
Yes.
but yeah, so it is addressed, but I personally like the fact that they ended it the way they did. I don't think we needed to see like that whole dramatic argument about whether the Doctor should go back. I think you should just like you've basically hit the Doctor Who fans in the gut. Just leave it hanging there until the next story, and make it let it be powerful. Let it for those that feel that it was powerful.
Yeah.
And so just leave it hanging and then pick it up next week, or in the next story, and which is what they did. And I thought that that was handled properly in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So now that we've reached the end, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Um No, I was I the only thing I did is I talked about this. The captain was very concerned about her bonus. I was like, wow, man,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah, she was
that's
cold. She was
she
hardcore.
was very cold. I guess she is a fairly well-known actress in Britain,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
Beryl.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
she
no,
was
I
it was a big get for the Doctor Who back then to get her
absolutely yes,
role, even though she's kind of a biatch as the
yes.
captain.
Yes. So,
Captain Briggs.
definitely, as I said, it piqued my interest in seeing more of the Fifth Doctor.
And we can definitely do that. I
Good.
will do my best to accommodate you.
Okay.
So Jesse, what was your favorite line of the episode?
So there wasn't as much cleverness, but there was
Mm-hmm.
one when the Doctor's trying to defuse the bomb, and
Mm-hmm.
he tells them to get back. And well, how about you? And he's basically says, "My arm is only this long. I can't back away any further." I thought that was a great line.
Mine, mine was when the doctor is arguing with the cyber leader about the value of emotions,
Yeah.
and he makes the comment. He says, "For some people, small, beautiful events are what life is all about."
And amen.
That's,
Absolutely.
that's so I thought that was a very cool line. And then, of course, I love Tegan's little throwaway line to Lieutenant Scott, where she's like, "Well, I'm just a mouth on legs."
Yes.
So, and that mouth on legs is basically like, it's her signature description. Like Patrick
Mhm.
Troughton's is like he's the cosmic hobo. Well, Tegan's basically the mouth on legs, and I adore that description for her because it's so apt.
Very nice. So what would you rate it? What rating did you give
Uh,
it?
I gave it 9 out of 10 badges for mathematical excellence.
So we're gonna do
Broken,
some yes.
smashing little bits after being used to kill cyber leaders.
Yes. I'm gonna give it 7 unnecessary androids. Since the Cybermen are mechanical, why do they need
Yeah,
androids? But like I said, it was of the three, this has been my least
yeah,
favorite, but still definitely worth the time. And if you have not seen this episode, why are you listening to this first? But just in case you just wanted to hear Charles and I talk, I recommend watching the episode first,
hmm
seeing the behind the scenes episode, and then going back and seeing it again, because there's a lot of things that it shares that it helps you to appreciate it.
yep. So Jesse, what's your reverse the polarity this time?
So this is not going to be a shock, but I'm going to say Doomsday.
Good pick.
Because yeah, the final episode of a companion. This is the end of Rose Tyler. Now she does come back a couple of times, but at the time we thought it was the end of a companion. The Cybermen are featured. It's a really it ends a season and the second series, and it was just a really well done episode that had a lot of similarities to this. So if you are feeling like, well, I'm going to watch something and feel a little sad that a companion's
Yeah,
leaving, I'm going to recommend Doomsday.
exactly. And just for the record, I'd like to hold, if I don't know if Jesse can read this, but I'd like to hold this up to the camera, and you could
Yes.
see which story I picked as my reverse the polarity.
Uh huh. There. Yes, I
Army
see
of
that.
Army of
Yes.
Ghosts
It's
slash
yes.
Doomsday. So
Yes.
we have a match.
Absolutely. Yes. Nice. Well, and I will not show you because I don't have it printed out, but
Yeah.
my original goal was 7 gold badges for mathematical excellence.
Oh, nice,
So
nice.
I had to very quickly
Oh, oh, I
7 androids.
Yep,
Yes.
yep. Oh, by the
So
way, but the whole reason those androids were used to is to throw off the
right.
viewer, so they don't
Absolutely.
reveal that that's the Cyberman. I think
And
that's why they were used.
and
But
that is
that's like,
exactly why they were used. And it's a really scary, kind of creepy first episode. It was,
mm,
with the caves and
dark.
everything. It was
Yeah,
dark.
yeah,
It was really well done. Yes.
yeah.
Well,
So
wonderful. Charles, what are we looking at in a couple weeks?
in a couple weeks, schedule permitting,
Yes.
we will hit the Colin Baker era of Doctor Who with The Mark of the Rani from 1985. So,
Nice.
so yes, this would be Colin Baker's first full season. He did one episode in Peter Davison's last season, The Twin Dilemma, but that's a really horrible episode, so I'm definitely
Okay.
not going to pick that one. But it's really what an atrocious episode. But the Mark of the Rani is important because it introduces a female villainous Time Lord for the very
Right.
first time, the Rani, and
Yes.
played by the late Kate O'Mara. So, and there's also a very familiar Doctor Who villain as well, but I will save that for now.
Um, I um I had purchased last year Trial of a Time Lord, and I've
Hmm.
seen that completely. So I've actually seen a little bit of Colin's
Doctor
time as a doctor because name dropping, I had to interview him last year.
taking a
Which, by
drink.
the way, that is yes, that is available on our feed where we tape the interview. Um, and so I'm looking forward though to seeing his. I think I've seen bits of it, but I haven't gone through the whole thing. So
Okay.
I'm excited about watching that.
Cool. Yeah, I hope
Yes.
you dig it. I think it's one of his stories weren't as good. A lot of people would argue they were, for the most part, pretty bad, but I think this is one of the better ones, and I'm curious to see what you think of it.
It really is can be sad that um, you can be the best actor and have a really good feeling as a doctor, but if the writing isn't there, it
Hmm.
makes it really tough.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
yeah, Collins Baker's really let down by the writing. So
yes.
hopefully you can kind of take that into account when watching this doctor. And I'm curious because his doctor is abrasive enough that I'm curious to see how you compare him to the 12th Doctor.
I
Because
am looking forward to
I
that.
see a lot of similarities within doctors between those two so
So,
far.
as a side note, this morning as I was watching the episode the second time, my son came over to get ready for the Cowboy game. And, I'm like, hey, I've got about 12 minutes left of this episode to watch it a second time. If you guys can hang tight. And so he's doing stuff and he's like, oh, he says, that's a young doctor. He says, unlike that house guy that's doing the new one. So I don't know if I remember to say that in the Christmas special, but Chris, when
That's
he watched it with, is like,
yeah.
when did the doctor become house? So
Yeah. Yeah, there's
yes.
definitely a lot of similarities between Peter Capaldi's Doctor and Gregory House, played by
No,
Hugh Laurie. So
wouldn't you love to see Hugh Laurie as a doctor though?
a lot of people wanted to see Hugh Laurie as the Doctor. Basically, he is playing the Doctor on House.
Yes.
Essentially, he's like a
I
cross between the Doctor and Sherlock Holmes on House.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So
So,
yeah,
um,
he would have been brilliant in the role.
yes. So, Charles, thank you for getting me out of my post playoff blues.
I did
Always
what
a
I could.
blast.
I hope I helped.
You
I
did.
hate to think I made it worse.
No, I
So
always enjoy talking Doctor Who with you. It's a lot of fun, and I hope that our listeners have enjoyed our reverse the polarity journey as much as I've enjoyed it. How do we find you, Charles?
You can find me all over the interwebs. On on Twitter at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, and then you can find me on the Facebook, on Instagram, on the Google Plus for all you crazy kids on the Google Plus, and on my blog of geeky things, damn good coffee and hot. So, where can they find you, Jesse?
I am at JWJ170104 on Twitter, Jesse Jackson on Facebook, and we both can be reached at uh, next stop everywhere at gmail.com. But
Hmm.
send it to us, we'll find you.
Yep.
And our Facebook page, Next Stop Everywhere, please go there. And iTunes. I think we're up to 20 ratings now, but we could use
Yeah.
some more reviews. Um, the
And check us out on Twitter at Next Stop SMG.
Yes,
So
Absolutely.
yeah, please hit us up there. We could definitely use some more followers on Twitter because we need the followers.
Yes, we do. So to end the episode, I am going to read what Charles talked about from Time Flight. Now listen to me, both of you. There are some rules that cannot be broken even with the TARDIS. Don't ever ask me to do anything like that again. You must accept that Adric is dead. His life wasn't wasted. He died trying to save others, just like his brother Varsh. You know Adric had a choice. This is the way he wanted it. So, rest in peace, Adric.
Adric.
And
Yeah.
Adric. Yes. It wasn't that good enough for me to pronounce his name right.
Oh, he doesn't.
Yes.
Oh, that's a little harsh.
That is harsh. Maybe Rob can clean that up in editing. Or maybe not.
It's all right. Adric's not very well liked anyway.
Yes, and I'm sure the actor's not listening to our podcast, though he should be.
Yeah, exactly. He should be.
All right. Everyone have a great 2015. We are going to continue our Doctor Who journey up until we get new episodes.
Yep. So we'll see you guys in a couple weeks for the Mark of the Ronnie.
Absolutely.
So
Take care.
Bye.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.